The sound of my own blood dripping onto the hardwood floor seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. My vision narrowed to crimson droplets soaking into the beige rug, the one I'd saved 3 paychecks to buy. Mom's handprint burned across my cheek, while Dad's fingers still dug into my arm, pinning me against the bookshelf where my head had struck the corner. "Ungrateful brat," Mom spat, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light as she reached for her purse. "You think you're better than us now?" Behind her, Ava, my 8-year-old daughter, stood frozen in the doorway, her small hands trembling as she witnessed what I'd spent years protecting her from, the truth about my family. "Mom!" she cried, running toward me, but Mom blocked her path. "Stay out of this, little girl," she snapped. "Maybe if your mother listened like Kayla does, she wouldn't get punished." My name is Nicole. I'm 34 and a single mother. This is the story of how I reclaimed my worth after my family tried to break me. I could feel warm blood trickling down my temple as I struggled to stand, my legs unsteady beneath me. The text message that had started this nightmare still glowed on my phone screen on the coffee table. "Rent is due. Help your sister out. We raised you better than this." 2 hours after ignoring that message, they had shown up at my duplex. No warning. Mom hadn't knocked. She'd banged on the door like a debt collector. Dad had stood behind her with that smug look he always wore when he was about to lecture me. "Why aren't you answering our messages?" Mom had demanded as I opened the door. "I've already told you I can't pay Kayla's rent this month," I'd replied, my voice steadier than I felt. Ava's dental procedure had emptied my emergency fund. My 28-year-old sister's refusal to hold a job wasn't my emergency. "Oh, so your daughter's dentist bill is more important than your sister's roof," Dad had said sarcastically, stepping inside without being invited. "I'm not responsible for her lifestyle," I'd responded, standing my ground. "She had options. She chose not to work. Don't put that on me." That's when things had escalated. Mom had thrown her purse across the room screaming, then the slap, hard and sharp. Dad grabbing my arm, shoving me toward the wall, my head hitting the bookshelf. Now they sat on my couch like they owned the place. My bleeding temple didn't matter. My daughter crying in the corner didn't matter. All they cared about was Kayla's rent. "We'll leave when you transfer the money," Dad barked. "Until then, we'll stay and make sure you don't waste any more of it." I looked at Ava's tear-streaked face, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Something inside me, something that had bent and yielded for years, suddenly hardened. "Get out," I whispered, my voice like ice. Mom laughed. "Or what? You'll call the police on your own parents, even you're not that pathetic." I didn't respond. I simply walked to Ava, took her hand, and led her to my bedroom. I locked the door behind us, my fingers trembling against the brass knob. Ava lay beside me that night, holding my hand in the darkness. "Mom," she whispered, "why do Grandma and Grandpa hate you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have the words. But in that moment, something in me cracked, then shifted. I stared at the ceiling, connecting dots I'd been avoiding for years. The way my parents had always favored Kayla, the increasing demands for money, the emotional manipulation, and now physical violence. Morning light filtered through the blinds as I listened to my parents moving around in my living room. They had refused to leave, camping out on my couch all night. I dressed Ava carefully for school, helping her into her favorite blue dress, covering my swollen eye with sunglasses. The mirror showed a purpling bruise along my hairline, impossible to completely hide. "We're going to be okay," I told her, my voice steadier than it had been in years. She nodded, solemn and trusting in a way that made my heart ache. We slipped out the back door while my parents argued in the kitchen. I drove Ava to school in silence, then turned toward the courthouse instead of my office, my mind suddenly crystal clear. 2 years ago, I had started putting away everything I could, every raise, every bonus, every freelance gig. I wasn't just saving, I was investing, and one of those investments was quietly buying the very house my parents lived in, the one I grew up in, a foreclosure cheap. I bought it through an LLC with money from my IT job savings and a loan from my former boss. He became a silent investor after I helped save his company thousands with my freelance security work. They never knew. The bruises on my arms and the fresh medical report from the hospital I visited right after dropping Ava at school were enough. They pushed through an emergency restraining order by noon. They hurt me in front of my daughter because I wouldn't pay for my sister's rent, I told the officer, my voice steady. He didn't even blink. "You did the right thing," he said. "Let us handle the rest." After leaving the courthouse, I sat in my car and reached out to the property manager of my childhood home, the one my parents were still renting month to month. "Are they behind on rent again?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They've skipped 3 months," she replied. "We were about to send them a notice." "Don't," I said. "Let me." That night, my parents had the audacity to text me from a different number since I had blocked their regular phones after getting the restraining order. "Dad, you've embarrassed this family." "Mom, Ava needs to learn who the real villains are." "Dad, you'll regret choosing outsiders over your own sister." The blue light of my phone illuminated my face in the darkness of my bedroom as I read their messages. My fingers hovered over the screen, then I set the phone down without replying. I blocked this number too. They didn't know I had already sent them a certified letter with a 30-day eviction notice. They didn't know what was coming next, but Kayla did. A week later, I bumped into her at the grocery store. She looked at me like I was dirt. Her cart filled with expensive hair products, while mine contained budget pasta and sale vegetables. "You're still playing the victim," she scoffed, tossing another luxury item into her cart. "You mean the victim of your freeloading," I said calmly. "I'm not playing anything. You're about to watch the stage crumble beneath your spotlight." She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. Some people only learn by falling. The eviction letter arrived at my parents' house the next morning. Mom called me screaming through the phone from yet another new number. "How could you do this to us?" I answered without emotion. "The same way you could hit your daughter in front of her child. Easy." "Where are we supposed to go?" she cried, her voice breaking in a way that would have once made me cave immediately. "That's your problem," I said. "But if you need help, maybe Kayla can pay your rent." There was silence on the other end. Then she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The weight of their expectations, their demands, their disappointment, all of it lifted in that moment of standing my ground. The next week was chaos. My parents tried to contact mutual relatives, painting me as cruel, ungrateful, mentally unstable. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to defend myself. The restraining order spoke volumes, and those who knew me, really knew me, understood. Instead, I picked Eva up from school with a calm heart and told her, "We're moving." Her eyes lit up. "Really? Where?" "To a place that's truly ours." I had closed on a small house a few streets over using the money I'd been saving. I also used a portion of what I'd earned from my rental property. Nothing fancy, but it had a fenced yard, Eva's favorite lavender bushes in front, and peace, real peace. Meanwhile, my parents were frantically trying to find housing with Kayla, who, according to my cousin Sarah, who still kept in touch with them, was now too busy to help poetic. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt healed. But the final confrontation was still to come. One that would happen face to face. Exactly 30 days from the date on the eviction notice, I stood across the street from house I once called home. The property manager had confirmed they had to be out by noon, and I wanted to ensure they complied with the eviction order. The front yard was cluttered with plastic bags, half-broken furniture, and my mother's prized patio swing, now rusted at the base. My father paced like a caged animal. Kayla wasn't there. According to Sarah, she had flown to Miami to clear her head. I crossed the street slowly, Ava holding my hand, her tiny fingers squeezing mine tighter the closer we got. She had a backpack over her shoulder with her sketch pad sticking out. I hadn't planned for her to witness this, but she had asked to come. "I want to see what it looks like when people get what they deserve," she had said that morning, her young face serious beyond her years. The moment they saw me, my mother rushed forward, dragging a suitcase behind her. "Nicole, you can't be serious," she snapped, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. "We're your family. You're throwing us out like garbage." I looked at her without flinching, remembering the sting of her palm against my face, the sound of Ava's frightened cry.
"I was garbage to you when I needed protection."
"When Ava needed protection, you hurt me like I was nothing, and now you want sympathy." My dad stomped toward us, his shadow falling across Ava, who pressed closer to my side. "You think money gives you power," he growled. "You've become arrogant. You're just a tenant who bought herself a crown." "No," I said. "I became the landlord of my own life and yours." He reached for my arm, but this time I didn't freeze. I didn't cower. "Touch me again," I said sharply, "and the police will arrive faster than your next lie." He stopped. Something in his eyes shifted. Maybe for the first time he realized he couldn't scare me anymore. Ava stepped slightly forward, her chin raised in a gesture so like my own that it made my heart swell with pride. "You shouldn't have hurt my mom," she said, voice quiet but clear. "You lied about love." My mom's lip trembled, but she didn't apologize. "She never did. You'll regret this," she hissed, clutching her handbag like it contained the last of her dignity. "No," I said. "I regretted letting you stay this long." They stood there, two people stripped of control, their pride scattered in the driveway like the belongings they'd neglected to pack properly. They had always held power over me through guilt, silence, and fear. But today the roles reversed, and it felt like breathing for the first time. "Let's go," I said to Ava. We walked back toward our car, not looking back. The weight of their gaze on my shoulders felt different now, impotent rather than crushing. Later that evening I poured us both tea. Hers chamomile, mine green. She sat across from me at the new kitchen table in our tiny home. The lavender bushes outside caught the golden hour light swaying like they'd been waiting for us. "Do you feel better now?" Ava asked, legs swinging under the chair. I thought for a moment. "I feel clean," I said, like something heavy was washed away. She nodded like she understood. I had started therapy. Ava had started painting. We were slowly rebuilding not just a home but a self-worth that had been stolen, splintered, and mocked. A few weeks later, I got a message from Sarah. She had stayed in touch with both sides of the family and told me my parents were now staying in a one-bedroom apartment above a closed nail salon. Kayla had ghosted them completely, leaving nothing but an angry voicemail and a drained Venmo account. No one was rushing to save them. They had burned every bridge. I never replied to Sarah. Instead, I posted a picture of Ava holding her latest painting, a small house with 2 stick figures and the sun smiling overhead. The caption read, "We don't live in fear anymore." And we didn't. I made the decision that day to permanently cut all ties with my parents and Kayla. The restraining order was extended indefinitely, and I told Sarah I no longer wanted updates about them. That chapter of our lives was closed forever. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you enjoy stories about personal growth and transformation, check out my recommended audiobook selection. There are so many inspiring titles that can help you on your own journey of healing and self-discovery.